One where no longer is trust our comfort, and the other that hasn't arrived yet. So, this is a conversation that we hope to share with you about how we stay human in that space in between.
My question is like, do we need to be certain to have trust? I don't think so. I think that trust is often given before it's earned, right?
And it always works out. You know, you would never pick up the chair from somebody's porch and not pop the $15 into the letterbox.
The level of complexity in the world is so high, and we're coming to the edge of our capacity to deal with that complexity. It's like literally the factory method of you put it on the conveyor belt. This happens at this point. This happens at this point. The doors go on, gets the paint. Here's a diploma. See you later.
It's going to be okay. It's no matter what, it's going to be okay, because even if I fall, there's something underneath me to catch me. Welcome to Pollination Media. I'm here with Louise and I'm here with Fred, and we're very happy to be here. Today we're going to have a conversation about the water that we're swimming in. In other words, A, are we happy with the water that we're swimming? Do we recognise the water that we're swimming in? But for us, it's about the complexity, I guess, at this moment. A lot of us are living through two worlds right now. One where no longer is trust our comfort, and the other that hasn't arrived yet. So this is a conversation that we hope to share with you about how we stay human in that space in between. Good morning.
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Fred.
Good afternoon.
So I guess the important chat today is to invite our audience into a conversation that's probably on all of our minds, and try to understand and make some sense, or another way of putting that is sense making, about where we are, how that affects us now, how it affects us into the future, how it affects our communities, how it affects the way we think, what we do, and how we live with uncertainty, because we've come to expect certainty, which is an interesting reality. Any thoughts or feelings about that, fellas?
Is it too much to say I'm uncertain about it?
I think it's apt.
Or is that taking it to a stupid place too early in the piece?
No, I think it's perfect, Fred. Just in a melting pot of uncertainty.
I'm uncertain about the uncertainty.
I mean, I guess it doesn't, I forget the index, but we, are living in the most volatile, uncertain, complex, and, oh goodness, the A has escaped me. But, yeah, the most uncertain times I guess, in modern history. And I think a lot to do with that is just the fact that we're, late stage capitalism. We are living in the most developed and highly commercialized, highly globalized world. There's just a lot of things that happen on a daily basis. We here with the family in Melbourne after traveling for basically this whole year, but driving, I don't know, kind of going over the Westgate Bridge and coming around that freeway coming south and looking up at the buildings and seeing how big a place it is, and that sense of like, there are so many people here. This isn't even Melbourne doesn't even rank in terms of city sizes in the world. There's Jakarta on the doorstep, which is the largest city in the world, and it's like 40 million people. But when you're in front of the scale of a city and seeing how many people there are, and looking over one shoulder and seeing the Port of Melbourne and how many containers are going through and how many trains are going past, like there's a lot in the world, like vast amounts that we aren't even seeing. And so it's not hard to see why it's so uncertain. It's so hard to keep a track of how much is happening in the world as it is. And I think often we end up with this literally little narrow view that comes through our phones or our screens of what's happening in the world, and it's a snippet. But even that, in its almost infinite complexity at the moment, just makes people more uncertain of what actually is going on and what the nature the world looks like at this moment in time.
Yeah. It's overwhelming, isn't it? We've been told so consistently that we have to, in some way, change and adapt. Everything has to change in order to be able to step into that kind of the new world, what's coming next. But then I was in Hong Kong back in January and I had that exactly the same feeling as well, Fred, that kind of mass, overwhelming feeling of going, oh my God, there's millions and millions of people here. And it's just this really dense city. And then just this kind of overwhelming feeling of going, are we gonna do this? Is this gonna happen? There's so many of us. Are we gonna be able to do this? Can we all do this together? And how are we gonna do this? Like this is crazy. This is massive. It's a massive project. But I guess we just have to keep I don't have to I suppose it's that kind of looking massively outside and then back inside, outside, inside all the time. And then I just kind of take small steps and go out into the garden and plant some vegetables, and it's all kind of comes back into focus again.
Small steps. Isn't it
Small
funny?
steps.
Isn't it funny how, for those of us who maybe watched one of our other podcasts, I don't know whether we mentioned this, but we all attended a Small Giants Wisdom and Action Forum where we heard Audrey Tang speak through this remarkable technology that we have, that we hate, that we love, that we hate, that creates the uncertainty, the small screen, big screen story. But it's interesting how we are in this position of constant industrialized navigation on a daily basis, like everything is going, and how we panic when it isn't going. So, I know I hearken back to COVID often just to point out a way that we were pushed to stop. And we just sort of discussed that, I think, last week. But it's interesting to me when all of a sudden industriousness stops and the containers aren't bolting out of the ports, and in fact they're stuck where they are because they can't go anywhere. They're not allowed to go anywhere, and world trade has to stop. And we panic in that uncertainty as well. So are we just in a constant state of uncertainty, no matter what? So, in other words, is there something that we can grab hold of, for example, from the last 10 years ago that we felt solid about? Like, what is there anything that we've learned about this trust that we can get out of this? Because I think part of what we're talking about here is, the fact that we don't actually trust any of the stuff that's going on in the world either. We don't, that driving into Melbourne, Fred, that you talk about, it's an interesting drive into Melbourne. That drive into Melbourne you've experienced, Louise, as you come out of an airport and you drive in and you just see there's the city of Melbourne. And it's overwhelming because it's so grand, because it's so grey, because it's so, like on a summer's day and in all the different seasons to do that drive in, like, do you look at that and go, that's a beautiful cityscape? Or do you go, we're going to build ourselves off the planet? Do you is that visual representation the thing that actually helps to reinforce the lack of trust in what's going on in the world?
When I look at cityscapes, I sometimes see them as infinitely beautiful. Like, when you look at power stations at nighttime and you just go, wow, they look really beautiful and amazing. But then it's a kind of the complexity of bringing all of those people together. And the fact is that we're all drawn together to do this kind of humaning together, and we actually managed to organize ourselves in this kind of massive people, like looking at Hong Kong, for instance, looking at, you know, these massive cities that we create and we're drawn towards, and we're able to work with each other within these crazy industrialized productive ways of being, that we actually manage to work it out. We all get onto the subway. And sometimes the subway is just completely nuts when you're like in London or you're in, you know, Tokyo, and it's just, but we managed to do this, and we managed to work together as humans, sometimes without even speaking to each other. We know the rules. We know how to be together. Gives me faith, but then at the same time, I'm also kind of go, why have we created such ugliness? Why is this so ugly? You know, and there's so much beautiful architecture around, you know, so many gorgeous things when you're walking down in cities and London and, well, all the cities, you know, and you see all this different architecture. And then you look at other architecture and you go, wow, why have you cut so many corners on building the most hideous building ever in the world? You know, so many thoughts. That's what happens when I'm in a city. But I'm also very glad to leave them as well. So,
yeah, that's interesting.
mm.
I wonder if these big ugly buildings that you're talking about are our modern day castles. Like our homes are our modern day castle. They're our modern day, you know, we can put a fence around ourselves, and we've got our moat, and we've got our maybe history's led us to this place where we feel that we have to build these big grandiose sort of places. And given that our topic today is talking around trust, it's interesting to me that these buildings have been built in the first place. You know, like if we were all to transplant ourselves from Australia at this moment and put ourselves into Europe, you know, it's not uncommon that you drive through all of these, you know, village to village to village, where you see these amazing castles and big walls around that protect those villages. And they're often on a hill, so that they've got a good lookout to see who's coming through the valleys and who's going to take them, who's going to take their homes or whatever, protect themselves. So it's come from somewhere. It's interesting to me that this is where we are. Maybe trust isn't about certainty anymore. Maybe we take it back to community. So I mean, Louise, this is you. You're all about how we look at trust in a community. And build, and you know, do we need to continue to build our big high fences around ourselves?
Mm.
So I think if we to look at that, Fred, you've done all of this amazing travel, consistent travel, and oh, I can hear you typing, Louise.
Can you?
Yeah, it's going clickety click 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 like a tap dancing there, like you've actually just done some tap dancing.
Really? That's so funny, because I was a bit worried that Nigel's just put the bread machine on. So I'm like Callie keeps turning me off and on, and I'm wondering whether you can actually hear the bread machine going in the background.
So Fred, with your sorry to interrupt you, sorry Lou. With your travel, how do we raise our children in a world that we don't fully understand ourselves? How do we do that?
I mean,
you too, Louise. I've got grown-ups.
As you was talking about, you know, trust and uncertainty, the thing that I was thinking about was ignorance. Like, I actually don't know that, like, that when I was talking about uncertainty at the opening there, I can hear the bread machine going. I'm jamming out to it.
I'm so sorry. I can't believe you spent the bread machine.
Doesn't matter.
Is it okay?
Yes. Yeah. If you want to, having some certainty about some tasty bread later is probably going to help get it through this conversation. But what I was like, what I meant about ignorance is that like the scale in which we measure the fact that we're in the most uncertain time is a relatively recent thing. Like how much do we need to know in order to navigate our lives? Not a whole lot. Like it's a myth of globalization that we need to be able to understand this vast interconnected global network of things, right? Like perhaps we do at this present moment because, you know, when the diesel stops, the trucks stop running up and down the east coast of Australia and the groceries stop hitting the shelves. Like, but for a long time in history, there just hasn't been a level of awareness of what's going on outside our borders. And those castles you're talking about, Christine, are only about protecting the rich folks in the middle of it and less so about the peasants who lived outside the city walls. It's like, yeah, okay, if you make it in before the gate closes, but like most people live their lives over a long period of time sort of blissfully unaware or not knowing because it just wasn't related to the things that the machinations of their like everyday life. And I think that we live in this like very interconnected world in terms of like information, and we are spending a lot of time consuming information from all over the world. And we now have it seems like we have this sort of false sense of security of like knowing what's happening across the world is important to how we go about our day, right? Like I have not been on a smartphone now for a month. I haven't really been reading the news. It's not changing how I'm living my day-to-day life right now. Like I'm still finding ways to stay informed about things that are important to me. But yeah, my question is like, do we need to be certain to have trust? I don't think so. I think that trust is often given before it's earned, right? And maybe that's the community piece that like often trust is blind. Like we have to find the people who we're willing to give trust to, and maybe to steer that to a place that's taking it into the sort of Nate Hagen's great simplification or the great turning, where we're sort of turning away from this massive global like interconnected sort of mirage of the world and back towards the like what's important on our doorstep. I'm not sure.
I think we're inherently trust quite easily. We have to be able to work together. We've had to be able to work together when we were crossing, hunter-gatherers, which we spent most of our time on this planet being. And now suddenly we're thrust into this environment where we are continually being told not to trust things, but actually that goes against our inherent nature. Like when, so I'm going to base it on Facebook Marketplace, which is a weird beast unto itself. But when you're doing Facebook Marketplace, suddenly this whole trust comes into action. You're like, hey, I'll just come round and I'll pop the $15 in your letterbox, and they're like, yeah, no worries. Or I'm just going to do this, and and you accept that you are going to trust each other, and it always works out. You would never pick up the chair from somebody's porch and not pop the $15 into the letterbox. It would just be, so there's these kind of, and I always love these interchanges as well, because you're like, oh, we do trust each other. I don't know who this person is. Or you go and pick something up from somebody and you have a good old chat on the doorstep, randomly, some random stranger. Those kind of random stranger conversations are beautiful. But if you're continually being told that narrative that we don't trust each other, that trust has been eroded, when, and we're consuming it all the time on social media, then you do tend to doubt yourself, that we're like, yeah, we don't trust each other anymore. Trust has been eroded. But I think it's inherently something that we do with each other. What do you think?
That, that from the trust like front, is it Edelman's, the trust index, like I think as well that is, again, all time low like trust, but that trust is between, often the low trust is between individuals and institutions, individuals and governments.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it's as much like between people themselves.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting when you consider that the evolution of Facebook was about a community. So, that was what I understood it to be when it first began. And when you consider that 3.7 billion users regularly shop on the platform of Facebook, it's pretty remarkable. Like, that's crazy. That's 40% of Facebook users. It's mad.
Mm.
So it means that your hypothesis is correct, I guess, at some level, and that we have an inherent desire to trust, a want to trust, um, but even to trust organisations. I think we want that there's a desire for that. I just think that we have chosen along the journey to, believe the algorithm. Like, the algorithm's probably got much more control than we like to admit, um, because we're all egocentric human beings, and we want to go, no, don't be ridiculous. Of course, I can make my own decisions. No one's telling me what I think. I know exactly what I think. Well, maybe that's not true. Maybe that's not 100% true, and maybe, well, I don't know, not and maybe, there's a reason for that. What has led to that? What has what has uncertainty meant for us around how we learn to live with this constant input, like bad small screen, bad small screen. That you said your life has not changed, Fred. Your life has not been impacted specifically from changing phones, going back to an analog phone. You're still managing to live your life. Your daily activities are still the same, minus death scrolling. I'm assuming,
Yeah.
minus falling down the hole of the constant frying of our brains. I don't know. I think when I think about that original question, which is, what's the water that we're swimming in? The fish, we talked about this. I think we talked on the phone about this, or I don't know, but the fish doesn't realize that they're swimming in water. Like, what's water? So, we sort of go along our day, but underneath it, because we're not just one thing. We are multi-layered as humans. We are interconnected, as you've just talked about. We are transcontextual. We are interdependent in so many ways, on everything that moves and shapes every single day. Is there a way to regain trust in ourselves first? Are we uncertain because we tell ourselves that we're uncertain? Or are we uncertain because there is uncertainty, without wanting to make this, I feel like I'm Dr. Zeusing the shit out of this, but but is it one of those moments where be careful what you wish for? Like, the more you focus on uncertainty, the more you focus on lack of trust, the more you feed this, you kind of in with your muesli and your yogurt and your fruit, and it's just, don't trust, this is bad, that's shocking, the world's falling apart. There's a failure within. It's like my computer system feels completely overloaded, and now I can't see how to trust. Is that convoluted?
I th- so um not last Friday, the Friday before, I caught up with some friends of ours, and we were chatting, and I think the Sarah Wilson on the 7 a.m. podcast came up. I haven't listened to it, but somebody
Yeah,
sort of explaining it. And she said that, talking about collapse again, back on collapse, and for anybody that's listening that isn't sort of thinking that things are collapsing in the world at the moment, like the reason why we bring this up is because we, like the three of us have talked about and looked at things like the nine planetary boundaries and how much we're in overshoot of natural resource consumption, and the things we've already mentioned, the decline in trust of public institutions and social cohesion and polarization. So these are all the reasons why we sort of talk about collapse as a thing. But in the reference to Sarah Wilson in the 7 a.m. podcast, she was talking about, civilizations tend to collapse when they grow too complex. And so, like, my build on that was, I think that civilizations probably collapse when the complexity of the civilization outpaces the ability for its populace and its government to the capacity to hold complexity. So the actual capacity to understand the complexity of the actual civilization. So you like look at the Roman Empire and how far it spread and how many interconnected parts there were and how many different governments in different regions and the different people and the different cultures that they were trying to govern, and that it just collapsed in on itself. And the moment that we're in now, when we talk about complexity, when we talk about trust and uncertainty, is that the level of complexity in the world is so high, and we're coming to the edge of our capacity to deal with that complexity. Because until the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, do we suddenly realize the interconnectedness of the global trade network and that oil has stopped flowing through the Strait of Hormuz, which means that there is less diesel available in Australia to run the trucks up and down the East Coast to get the groceries from places that they're grown, to get the bananas from Queensland down to Melbourne. Like, suddenly that becomes really apparent. But we're not holding that complexity on a daily basis. So the uncertainty is coming from the fact that there's so much stuff, there's so much interconnected stuff going on in the world that we start to lose sight of it. And it's almost the same with, I feel, with sort of the advancement of science. And then you get to the point of like the complexity in the actual scientific inquiry. If you want to talk about quantum physics as a area that's hard to actually comprehend, it's very easy to hear about quantum physics and things like particle superposition and quantum tunneling, where a particle can jump from one place through a solid wall to another place. It's hard. It's almost indistinguishable from magic when you hear something like that. So you're like, if I can't actually comprehend the things that are going on, of course, then it just becomes uncertainty in my mind, because I actually don't, there's just a range of things I don't know. And that's, I guess, where you come back to trust of like, you just kind of got to trust the fact that quantum physics is going to keep quantum physicsing because the whole world is still in a stable state.
So uncertainty and trust are two vastly different things. One can affect the other because it's interconnected. But the story that we're telling ourselves, because obviously the stories that we tell ourselves are the things that drive us in our every single day life, whilst we're lifing the shit out of life, trust can be held at the same time as complexity. But as human beings, we can actually go into a state of what is like overwhelm. So we go into that whole vagus nerve fight or flight thing. And maybe as I'm swimming through the water, someone taps me on my fin and goes, "Did you know we're swimming in water?" And I have a complete fucking panic attack because I had no idea that I was swimming in water. I was just swimming. Like, maybe it's because someone just gave me a piece of information that I was just not ready for, and I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you didn't need to know that the water was there to swim, right?
No.
But then if you need to know, for instance, that you've somehow poisoned the water, you need to understand the water in order to understand how to fix the water so that you don't die from the poisoning in the water. Like that's, I think, that barrier. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like that.
What do
And
you,
the fact that the where I usually swim is just a lot warmer than it used to be. Like it seriously is a little bit warmer than it used to be, and there seems to be less of it. And
mm,
I feel like the land is getting closer to me.
yeah.
Mm.
What do you think, Louise?
Mm. It's complex. It's very complex.
I wonder we need a good cup of tea when we have these chats.
Oh, dear me. It's like being thrown around all over the place, isn't it, to a certain degree? Just, and I have, being an independent artist and producer, I sit a lot in that place of not knowing, having just being
Mm.
uncertain about certain things. And it's quite difficult sometimes, but I've got better at it as but it's exhausting to sit in that kind of uncertainty. Not knowing what's going on, not knowing when the next job is going to come in, not knowing, having to generate work, having to kind of, you know, roll with the punches of getting gigs in, gigs falling away, and being an artist as well, which is a horrible term, but it does feel like you're a bit of the bottom feeder as well at sometimes, that no matter what happens, um, you know, jobs fall away, the budget gets cut, the artist is the first person to go. So there's always living in uncertainty. And so you do get used to it, but it's exhausting.
Well, that's fear too, uncertainty and fear. Like they
Mm,
can't. I mean, because your independence as an artist is to make the money so you can feed your family,
yeah,
pay your mortgage, do the reality of life for you.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I guess it's a balance of the fear and the uncertainty. So you can, and some people just can't. They just, I don't know how you do that, Louise. I don't know how you artists or independent artists, independent producers. How do you actually manage to sit in that world all the time? And it's difficult because it's not for everybody. But then also you have to lean into it, and then sometimes it's just exhausting, and you're like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living in uncertainty. And then you've got the uncertainty of the entire world and everything that is going on around us. And that uncertainty, just going back into that conversation with your children, I think about it every single day when when I walk up to school with Olive. Should I be sending her to this school? Is she learning what she needs to learn for the future? Because of the education system hasn't really caught up yet. It's still just this very kind of industrialized way process of learning, and it just feels very not serving our children for what they're going to need when they get older. But then I'm like, well, what is that? And yeah, I question it every single day. So and then holding that complexity as well. Am I doing the right thing for them? Or should we just get this reading and writing thing over and done with, and then pull them out, and let's get some serious experiences underneath their belt? Like I should show her to garden and repair work and scouts, or like just more kind of practical skills.
Mm.
It
That's a great simplification.
Yeah, absolutely. Does
um
Oni built a chopping board the other day, for instance? Sorry to interrupt you. He built a really beautiful chopping board, and he went to do it in a yin yang shape. It was really gorgeous, but he stuffed it up a little bit, but it was fine. It's still beautiful. But then he had to write a project. He had to write about it, and he's really dyslexic. And he was like, why have I got to now write about the chopping board? Like, why do I have to do that? And it is like, why does he have to write about the chopping board? It serves no purpose. He has got the chopping board, and the chopping board is the chopping board, and it's doing its job. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah,
it's
school needs
it's
to be readjusted. Sorry, Fred.
no, no, no. I think it kind of goes to something that Christine was alluding to earlier about like industrialized as a sort of view, and Nora Bateson has that term, the ghost of mechanization. So like we're still living in the shadow of the Industrial Revolution. And like I read this, I was saying some, like we're also approaching for River, he's 5 and he needs to go into some kind of schooling at the start of next year. So we're also like having those conversations and doing that research. And I can't remember where I saw it, but somebody was talking about the fact that schools are like mirror exactly like an industrial process where it's like everybody comes in, like everything, like it's literally like the factory line of like they come in at the same time, they get treated the same way, and they come out at the same time, right? Like it's not based on the individual. It's like literally the factory method of you put it on the conveyor belt. This happens at this point. This happens at this point. The doors go on, gets the paint. Here's a diploma. See you later. Like, and that's a way that we're related with many, many things, because industrialization created huge amounts of economic growth over the last 200 years. And so we just sort of control C, control V, that approach across many, many different things without even thinking about it. And it becomes, again, the sea we swim in, the water we swim in. It's the stories that we have that we use to make sense of the world in uncertainty through complexity have their basis in the Industrial Revolution, in the industrialization of the particularly, very strongly in the Western world. And one of the people who has a very interesting sort of models to look at this is Dave Snowden, who has the Cynefin framework. And this will have to go into the show notes because Cynefin is not spelt the way it sounds. It's a Welsh word. So look for that in the show notes and see if you can find it and work it out. But
is it the name of a place? Is it
it's
a
name of a place in Wales? Yes, yeah.
Carnarvon.
Carnarvon. There you go.
Carnarvon. Yes, I'm half Welsh. That's how it's pronounced. Yes, I spent many a holiday at Carnarvon. It's got a really stunning castle there. Yeah, it's a beautiful castle.
Okay.
Anyway,
so I think Dave Snowden is from Carnarvon.
Wow.
And shout out to all my Welsh friends, and apologies for butchering that. But and so like he has he developed this framework for like a telecommunications company in the 80s or something like that. And he essentially looked at the different types of systems. So there's a simple system where exactly like the causes and effects of things that happen are very predictable. Then you get a complicated system in which there are many, many, many parts, many, many interdependent parts, but the causes and effects of those interactions are all knowable. And an example is like a Boeing 737. It's like 6 million parts or something, but engineers have to know what all those parts do in order to make the plane fly. And that's contrasted to a complex system. And a complex system is where there are interrelated variables, which means that things relate with each other, but not always in knowable ways and not always in predictable ways. And an example of that is an ecosystem, right? A coral reef, a garden, where you have lots of independent features to that system. You've got microbes in the soil, you've got plants, you've got birds dispersing seeds, and you can't know from looking at it how it's going to pan out. You can't know that putting a seed in the garden will result in a bird eating the fruit from that tree later and dispersing it in a garden 3 blocks over or in the forest or whatever. And approaching a complex system like it's complicated is kind of the feeling I get when you look at how we approach the world we live in, with the view that it looks like the industrialized factory processes that we've seen in the last 200 years, because there are many, many, many interrelated. There's 8 billion humans. There's all the life. There's all the businesses and all these market forces and all these things that interrelate with each other. And it's not always predictable, the outcomes. And so trying to approach that from the perspective of, I put X in the top and it goes through the machine and it comes out as Y on the factory belt. it's just not sort of, I don't believe that it's sustainable as a way to approach life. And the thing with the complex system is being comfortable with the uncertainty of like, I don't know all the interactions. And, Dave Snowden has a method of dealing with those systems, and it's probe, sense, act. So like, go in and see what the reactions are when you do something. Pay attention to your senses and what you're interpreting from that system, and then make a choice on your action instead of trying to plan ahead and trying to know all the interactions ahead of time.
Mm.
Which, of course,
So
we don't.
what are you doing? What are you thinking with your children then, Fred?
Oh, I don't know. Like, one of the biggest, like, again, lots of uncertainty. So like, I don't know what the next 5 years will look like. I don't know what the next 10 years will look like. And I think that,
Yeah.
what's happening with AI, even if you just isolate it to the impacts on labor force, like, and if you approach school as this preparing kids to be employable
In the labor.
adults,
Yeah.
yeah, like being the labor, I don't know what that's going to look like. So I'm not going to make the decision based on that. One of my key like things that I'm thinking about, and there's a lot of things that we're holding as a family trying to work this out, but is that I want like my children to have friends. I want my children to have good social relationships. That's really important to me. So that's a guiding sort of light in how I'm thinking about it. And also, being with my son and looking at him and being like, what do you need out of an environment that's just going to be good to you? Not
Mm.
necessarily because I think you need to come out of it with all these skills. Like, I think that I will teach you skills, and I think that my wife will teach him skills, and his grandparents and the people in our communities will teach them lots of skills that help them get along with life, and trying to find the other things that I can't give him that other people can. So, the long and the short is I have no idea, and we're really on the clock. And we've got some grandparents sweating a little bit because they don't know how we're going to go with it, but we're just trying to figure it out, just trying to navigate that uncertainty and taking it one step at a time.
It's a complex. It's a really big decision. And then when they start school, it's for a really, really long time. It just goes
Yeah.
on forever and ever, feels like.
It does. And
It
they will
really
come
does
out
go
of
on
it.
for, yeah, they do come
They
out
come
the
out
other
the other
end.
end. They come out the other end, even though they've been through that sausage factory.
Mm.
It's really interesting because obviously the three of us have got children at very different ages. And in fact, I celebrated a 23rd birthday on Friday for my youngest daughter, who invited 30 of her closest and most intimate friends over for a meal that she cooked for them.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It was well, maybe this is the yearning of community that they have.
Yeah.
Constantly, constantly yearn for community. But the thing that's really interesting to watch in them through their journeys, and certainly through choosing schools, when they were young, when they were we decided to send them to a school that was sort of a bit different, a bit different around here, a bit different from Bayside. And we sent them off to a school called Cornish College. And it was a subsidiary school associated with a private school in Brighton. And they went there for early learning. So, from 3 to grade 1, I think. And it was really a beautiful school, but too far away. Like for Christine, who had to work and what have you, and get them there and get back, and so logistically, it ended up being far too challenging for them to stay there. But but and it wasn't a school that taught them if you work hard, you'll be rewarded. It didn't teach them um, that the world is easy. It didn't teach them. It didn't teach them if education is everything. What it taught them was to play in the dirt. They played in the mud. They had to have their own gumboots to go to school every day. They had to um, go and feed the ducks, which is how they learnt their maths. They played with clay to build stuff. They interacted through the Reggio Emilio method, which is, I think it's like 100 languages of children. So in other words, everybody's different. We're all different. We're completely different. It's very, I've got friends who've got Steiner kids, and they go, it's very Steiner. Like, okay, so it's very whatever. It was more that they were on the land. They were in the dirt. They were able to just use their imaginations to learn and build from. And although they were only there for 3 years, it set a trajectory on how they'd go through the sausage machine, I think. And it showed that my daughter needed structure. She really needed structure. Um, so the complexity of holding structure and adventure, right? Got to have the adventure, got to have the structure. And Sam was the other, like totally different. Sam was, Sam was, oh, I don't like this structure. I need more freedom. Like I need more freedom, and I don't learn like they do. Like I don't. If someone just stands up the front, well, what? Remember Peanuts, the Snoopy cartoon? So the teacher at the front would go wah 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 wah. Sam would be like, I don't like it. Mom, I don't like it. He didn't like it. Ruby processed information very differently, like very differently. But what they've both come out with is they've had unbelievable variety in education, because what might have been great for that period of time just wasn't for the rest of the period of time. And they needed to try another thing and another thing and another thing. And as a parent, like you talk about uncertainty, far out. Like I was just going, oh my God, I am so fucking this up. Like beyond. Can you just like dropping kids into new environments consistently going, give me five, lovely. Here's your lunch. Everything's fine. No, don't cry. You'll be good. Off you go. Walk it off. And it was only in year 12 where they had to write an essay for English. I think it was part of his exam, one of his exams. And I think the question was, something like, what has been your greatest challenge? Like write about your persuasive text. What was your greatest challenge? Or maybe, I don't know, anyway. And he came home and he said, I wrote about changing schools. And I was like, oh God, I felt sick. Like I'd had, oh, okay. Right. Okay. I'm sorry about that. And he said, oh no, my God, it was like I wrote this essay about how I've got friends all over the world, and that I've learned how to stand on my own 2 feet, and that I can walk in anywhere and make friends with people. And I love the earth that I walk on. And you push me into a school camp, and he was the small, like he was the smallest. He was like the runt of the litter in school. And off he goes off at, and his backpack is as big as he is as a human. And he's like, oh no. Now we know, you all know, because I've shared this with you, but he's an outdoor educator, and he takes kids out and teaches them, yes, you can throw yourself into the Murray River and I will be there to catch you, and you are going to laugh your guts out at this, and it's going to teach you ABCD about yourself. So, and it'll teach you how to, back to our subject matter of trust and certainty, it will teach you how you can trust someone to catch you. Not just me, but the people that you least expected that you could trust in school. So within these really untrusted sort of organisations, and these organisations that all three of us agree have not actually, it'd be wonderful if they change. And clearly that's why we've started, that's why we're doing Phoenix Festivals. Like there's a way of building that community and looking at how we can add new things into our world that will help to create a joyful community experience and help to build trust and cradle us through uncertainty and do all sorts of wonderful things and, you know, make that group of people the people that you want to cook for, like Ruby did for her birthday. It's like that. And the in between section, you know, the section of when you're swimming through the water and you've got it's really deep and beautiful, the water's cool, to the point where you actually seeing the land is a little bit closer to you than you thought it was going to be, and the water's warmer. So the in between, that liminal space of where we start and where we're going, because we're still not there, because they're only in their mid-20s, right?
Mm.
And they always seem to be going to fucking school. Like they're always at school, these people. Anyway, whatever. I thought they'd be finished, but they're still there. And there've been some really unpleasant moments, like some, as a parent, as a person, to observe and to be witness to the challenges and the moments where you are curious and you go to school like it's going to be a new day, or, you know, the diagnoses of auditory processing challenges, or the ADHD challenges, or the, you know, mean girls group, or the feeling alone, or all of those things. As a parent, we are so much a part of this. Like the simplification, the great simplification, the Sarah Wilson, send them to guides, send them to brownies, get them camping, teach them how to change the power, so that if we don't have power, they know how to change a fuse. You know, most of us are actually quite digital now, so that it will be quite challenging. But, you know, those like, teach them how to cook, all the stuff. Teach them how to fish. Teach them how to cook. Teach them how to swim. Teach them how to ride a bike. Teach them how to go shopping and order food, but like buy food, cook food, not Uber food. Like,
Mm.
it's us we do that. Schools don't do that yet. We do that. We do that, and that's the pastoral care of. I think that is the community. So yeah. Anyway, that's a rave. I apologise, but I just think it's
Don't apologise. All good.
it's an interesting thing, that certainty and the trust, because I think it's never one thing.
Yeah, it's just interesting to ask the question of our institutions, like
Ugh.
schools, of like, because something that occurred to me as you were speaking as well is that, like, industrialization of school is also is about like resources and scale, which means that we've collectively, like, education has been delivered in places where it wasn't, because we've taken something that was able to be transferred and delivered it in this industrialized way, right?
Yep.
And so, like,
Yep.
it's really easy at this point in a place like Australia to be like, like, you know, it's not taking care of the whole human here. Whereas in a lot of places that are resource constrained, that have like 100 kids in a classroom, they're like, the whole human, like, we're just trying to teach these kids something right now. And that education is a privilege in a lot of places. So, you know, grew up in Fiji, still, like, that's a big part of who I am. And my parents lived there. And one of the places that we spent a lot of time as kids is very remote. And there's a couple schools there, but people would very easily get away without sending their kids to school. And there was very, very obvious differences between the kids who went to school and who didn't, because the kids who went to school were able to access work on the mainland. They could go and they could get different jobs. Their whole outlook looked different. But the kids who didn't go to school ended up sticking around the village. They ended up farming coconuts for copra, which get picked up and turned into coconut oil to be shipped off, and it's worth no money. Right? There was a very obvious economic difference in those folks' lives because of that. And so it's important to acknowledge that, but I think it's also important to ask the question of, like, where to from here? Like, what can we do? What can we do that starts building this capacity for complexity, because we talk about the collapse, we talk about all the things that can't possibly keep sustaining themselves in this ultra complex, uncertain, volatile world. But also we believe, I think we believe, based on conversations we've had as a group, that there's something that will regrow from whatever falls apart for us. And what is a school going to be in that future? And what can we take from the technology that's developing now that's going to help us have that scale so that it is accessible to lots of people? But then also, how are we going to help kids to learn about this new way of being and this new capacity to have for a world that is sort of infinitely more complex than the world was when that system of schooling was being rolled out en masse?
And how do we do it?
Oh.
How do we do it in a way that allows them to still feel a sense of belonging in a world that seems to be racing, and that the collective large percentage of the group of the village has decided to move out of the village into the big grey buildings that we've just talked about? How do we raise our children in a world we don't fully understand ourselves?
Mm. Well, hopefully with the knowledge that we will have around technology, that technology will be reduced in schools, because as all the data is coming out now that kids haven't got the capacity to learn as well, or don't have the imagination and are not cognitively more advanced as we were, because they're having so much technology, so much reliance on computers and screens. But there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do about it, because, like, I fought for so long with my son. He's autistic, and which we found out when he was 6. And the reason why the school that he went to was because it was a bush school, which seems very similar to the one that you were talking about, Christine, where everything was very much based around bio learning. And so maths was all, they just studied bees just purely for the whole term.
Yeah.
And it was also English and maths and everything was extracted out of just learning about bees. He learnt Ghana, which is the local indigenous language here. And he was continually outside. He was, used to with his friends, he was quite young actually as well. He was about 10. He had to build 9 or 10. He had to build a structure and then sleep in it on the oval, which wasn't an oval anymore because they'd ripped up the cricket strip, and they'd built a big fire pit. So he had all this beautiful nurturing, but then as soon as he turned 11, 12, and he went to the secondary school, he was just handed a computer. That was it. Over. All of that fight. There's nothing I could do. And I think had he not been handed a computer, it just would have been so much different. And it's great that the schools have been, the phones have been taken out of schools now as well. But yeah, just too much technology, too much reliance on technology.
I think Audrey Tang has some really interesting things to say about that.
Yeah.
They talked about I think often in conversations like this, it's really easy to jump into like binary positions on it as well.
Yeah.
Of it's no screens or it's yes screens. But Audrey, in the Wisdom in Action forum that we all went to in the opening plenary,
I missed it.
Yeah.
I missed the one with the beginning.
Missing
so I'm like,
yeah. I think
this is the missing piece.
And I think that I suspect the replay actually might be public now on the Small Giants YouTube. So check the show notes and we'll put it in there. But talking about the ways that digital literacy was being taught in schools in Taiwan in a way that wasn't creating that those kinds of problems of if there's a screen, it's actually multiple kids to one screen. So they are coming together to complete a particular task or a particular project, and that they're learning digital skills and digital literacy as a small group interacting with one screen, and not
And
as like a
solving together, etc.
yeah, and not in a one-on-one, because it's breaking that sort of that
tunnel vision at the one screen where you're just having the relationship with the screen and not looking at each other in the eye, essentially, not actually having that kind of human connection, and that learning those small, just intricate, even things we don't even realize are happening, are just, we're all learning the kind of facial recognition and how somebody's saying something and their movement and their bodies and everything. Sorry, it's fascinating.
No, and so I think that the message of it is there's a middle way, right? And that's part of this thing that we're talking about. Like, there's ways that preserves our humanness and develops a skill in digital literacy and digital, like, different digital skills that are going to be necessary to deal with the level of complexity and uncertainty in the world, because it's not really going to be an option for a lot of people to just turn the switch off on a computer, right? Like, but whatever change is coming, we know it's going to involve technology. Like, our lives are going to involve technology. So much is built on it, and our kids are going to have some level of needing to know how to navigate that. And so, what's the middle way, or what's living in that gray zone between those two binaries? What's on that tense tightrope between the two things that's going to actually help kids deal with that uncertainty and that complexity?
I mean, it would be beautiful. Sorry.
Sorry, no, go. No, go. Go, no. I was just going to ask a couple of questions to get us.
To bring it round.
Well, just to just sort of bring it all together for our listeners.
Yeah. I was just thinking about writing and the physical action of writing. And I really enjoy writing, and I really enjoy the process of writing, and I learn through writing. And having that taken away, and then it's not forced, but everything, it has to be focused in on the computer screen, and everything's got to be typed out. There's just a different absorption of information that happens. Just there's that given, like talking about that grey point, that the bit in between, and so there's just this kind of given that the computer is handed over, and now everything has got to be based around the computer, when it's just a bit of a shame, where it's actually, you can use a computer to write your essay, but you can also handwrite it as well, and you're going to get the same score. It doesn't, you're not going to get knocked down because you've got this handwritten essay. Just that kind of the middle ground. And I love a good fountain pen. I love a good pen. Getting your pen license. I mean, we used to have to draw up the ink. I was 8 years old when I was given a hat to write with ink, and I used to have to draw up the ink with an inkwell. Crazy. It feels like I was born in the Victorian age. I mean,
because we were. So if someone's listening and feels lost between worlds right now, what would you want them to know, Louise? What is the one thing that you've stopped pretending to know? That's the one thing that you've stopped pretending to know.
Oh, I have no idea. I have the one thing that I've sometimes everything. when when everything gets too much, and you're being bombarded, you're being bombarded, and there's an addiction to it as well. So there's an addiction to put the podcast on when you're driving. There's an addiction to listen to everything, to absorb the information, and to have all the text coming in, and to scroll, and to make sure that you're reading all the right things. When you go outside, this is the best thing for me when you in that kind of overwhelm, is to go outside and to look at the bees on my caper bush, which is just like mental, like batshit crazy. There are so many bees, and now the bees have all shifted because it's winter. They've shifted up onto the pollen outside, onto the ash tree, and it's just like overwhelming. And just to sit in nature for a moment and just hang out with some insects is the best thing, I think. Hang out with the ants, go and check them out, see what they're up to, because it's a lot more relaxing than what we've created for ourselves.
What gives you confidence despite the uncertainty?
What gives me confidence despite uncertainty?
Yeah.
I mean, probably kids, right? Like, there's just so much joy in my kids' experience of the world right now. Like, I just got the best hug this morning when Paul got out of bed. And typically, she wakes up in the morning and she's like, "No, like I don't want Dad. Go away." I don't know what it's about. But Em was out this morning, and so she yells out like, "Mom!" And River replies, being like, "She's gone out," or something. It's 3 and 5. The conversations these two have are crazy. And so it's kind of quiet. And then the poet just kind of walks out and she's very chill. And she just gave me like the sweetest hug. And yeah, kids are amazing. Like they just can do anything. And there's so much that they will do. And you look at the kids, Gen Z, who are just absolutely everywhere fighting for stuff they believe in. Your kids, Justine, like the turning towards the community, like the kids are all right. Like they got this. Let's give them the best possible opportunity we can. But they are so resilient and adaptable. They are in the perfect position to figure it out.
Yeah. I think for me, in my, what did we call it last week? Was it the sunset? You calling it the sunset or the afternoon?
Sunset.
Or what?
The afternoon.
Right.
The afternoon,
Yeah.
in your afternoon,
Yeah.
Christine.
And we decided that I'm early afternoon because my grandparents lived till they were 104, so I'm pretty, yeah. Is to embrace uncertainty. Is to actually go, you know what? I have no idea. I literally, I'm learning as I'm going, and I'm still learning as I'm going, and I've always learned as I've gone. Like when I had a human being that I gave birth to, I had no, despite the books, despite the this, despite the that, no idea, no clue. And gave it a red hot go and had a crack, and I agree with you both around, around the kids, they'll work it out. I think the uncertainty for me is being overshadowed or maybe held just nicely like a trampoline under a tightrope walking person. So I'm the tightrope walker, and I've just decided I've got the weights or the stick, and I'm actually terrified of heights. So this is even a scary thing for me. My knees are going having this discussion, is to walk out and go, it's going to be okay. It's no matter what, it's going to be okay, because even if I fall, I've got there's something underneath there to catch me. So uncertainty is it just exists and has always existed. It's not a new thing. We're just, maybe it's another level, or maybe it just looks different, or at now. Um, uh, but what I'm hopeful about is that we three from totally different age groups are actually taking action, making a decision to take action in whatever way we can, in whichever way we do it. And we won't get it right, and it's not always perfect. And we too struggle with, you know, how much does it cost me to get, oh my God, really? A tomato is that much? Like all of the things are happening to us all at the same time in different ways, but that we have each other, we have community, and we're not just going to leave it for our kids to sort out. We are choosing to do something and include them in the sorting of it out. We're actually actively listening, actively doing things, and also quietly sitting silently, like you say, going outside into nature, reclaiming the good stuff from when
Yeah.
we were like the running around playing outside. The kids, like I love watching both of your kids, and how they kind of pop in and they jump into a screen and they're like, "Hi, well, hi, Princeton," they're just there's just no bullshit with kids. There's all the layering is just they're very raw and real and open and fabulous. So they feed us, like nourish us, so spectacularly and remind us of the curiosity and of the opportunity to, I don't know, be part of something with them, for them, toward the future. They're our next
Yeah.
leaders. And what a lovely conversation to be having today.
Mm.
Like, what a great conversation to talk about uncertainty and a lack of trust. And haven't we been all over the world with that? With just not an uncommon reality with us
Yeah.
all. And I hope that our audience feel part of that and know that they're not alone. We all feel a bit uncertain and we all feel challenged at times, but we've got each other. We've got to
Yeah.
remember we've got each other, and we don't have to have the big castle walls. And you're quite right, Fred. Those of us who are not living in the trillion dollar castles are just the knaves living in the villages and um, going about our business with our village, with our people, our community. Thank you for being part of my community. I'm very grateful for both of you.
I'm grateful for you too, my darlings.
Mm,
And for
thank you
everybody
so
listening to
much.
this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, what a blessing. Any final words from you, Fred?
Just what should the people do, Christine, if they find the video and on
Ah, yeah, the
YouTube or
house
they
people.
comes across the feed? Like, what do they need to do?
We would love you to subscribe to Pollination Media and be part of our community. We're always, and I think we're really also open to hearing, what do you want to hear about? Send us some questions. Is there anything that's interesting to you that
Mm.
you'd like to talk about? We're putting these out once a week, and we're soon to be bringing guests, which is a bit exciting. And, we will do what we can to um, have the conversations we hope everybody's wanting to have. So subscribe, check out our show notes for anything, any references to any resources or books or inspirational people to us. We will drop into the show
Show
notes,
notes.
and we will speak to you again next week. Thank you
See you next
kindly.
week. Thank you.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.